The night was warm. Las Vegas in July of 1963. The kind of heat that didn't quit, even after the sun went down. The Strip was blazing with neon. Crowds pouring in and out of casinos. The sound of slot machines, and laughter, and music bleeding into the desert air. Deanna Martin was 22 years old. Dean Martin's oldest daughter. She'd driven down from Los Angeles to see her father perform at the Sands. He was headlining with Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. the Rat Pack in full swing. The shows were legendary, sold out every night. She'd watched from a booth near the stage, nursed a drink, laughed at her father's casual timing, the way he made everything look effortless. After the show, she'd said goodnight to him backstage, hugged him, told him she'd see him in a few days back in L.A. It was almost 2 in the morning when she walked out the side entrance of the Sands toward the parking lot. The casino staff knew her. Security usually walked her to her car, but tonight they were dealing with something else. A fight that had broken out near the craps tables, and she'd waved them off. It was a short walk. Well lit. Safe. Except it wasn't. She was halfway to her car when she heard footsteps behind her. Fast. Too close. Before she could turn around, a hand grabbed her arm. Hard. Fingers digging in. She spun. Tried to pull away. But there were 2 of them. Men in their 30s. Suits that looked expensive but worn wrong. One had her arm. The other moved in front of her, blocking her path. "Where you going so fast, sweetheart?" The one holding her arm said. His breath smelled like whiskey and cigarettes. "Let go of me." Her voice was steady, but her heart was hammering. "Relax. We just want to talk. You're Dean Martin's kid, right? We're fans. Big fans. Just want a minute of your time." The other one stepped closer. Too close. "Maybe you could introduce us. Put in a good word. We got business we'd like to discuss with him." Deanna tried to pull away again. The grip on her arm tightened. She looked around. The parking lot was empty. The side entrance was 50 feet away. She could scream, but with the noise from the casino, she didn't know if anyone would hear. I said, "Let go." The man holding her arm smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "Come on now. Don't be difficult. We're being nice. Just a conversation. My father doesn't conduct business in parking lots. Maybe he should. Maybe he should be more accommodating to people who've supported him all these years." The other man moved even closer. His hand reached toward her face. She jerked back. And then a voice cut through the darkness. Calm. Cold. "Take your hands off her. Now." All 3 of them turned. Frank Sinatra stood 10 feet away. He wasn't a big man. 5'7". Maybe 140, soaking wet. He was wearing the same tuxedo he'd performed in. The bow tie loosened. A cigarette in his hand. But he didn't look small. He looked dangerous. The man holding Deanna's arm didn't let go. "Mr. Sinatra, we were just talking to. I didn't ask what you were doing. I told you to let her go. With all due respect, you don't have my respect. And you're about to lose a lot more than that if you don't step away from her right now." The 2 men exchanged a glance. They knew who Sinatra was. Everyone knew who Sinatra was. But they also knew he was just an entertainer. Just a singer. What was he going to do? The one holding Deanna's arm tightened his grip. "Look, Mr. Sinatra, this doesn't concern you. We're just having a friendly." Frank flicked his cigarette onto the pavement. Took 3 steps forward. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "You've got 5 seconds. Then I make a phone call. And when I make that phone call, you 2 don't leave Las Vegas. You understand me?" You don't leave this parking lot. Something in his tone made the temperature drop. This wasn't a threat. It was a fact, delivered with absolute certainty. The man let go of Deanna's arm. Both men stepped back. But they didn't leave. The one who'd been doing most of the talking tried to salvage something. We didn't mean any disrespect. We just wanted to talk to Dean about an opportunity. Dean doesn't take meetings with people who put their hands on his daughter. Now get out of here before I change my mind about that phone call. The men hesitated. Then they walked away. Not running, but not slow either. They disappeared around the side of the building, heading toward the main parking lot. Frank waited until they were gone. Then he turned to Deanna. His face softened immediately. "You okay, honey?" She nodded. Her hands were shaking. "Yeah, I think so. Did they hurt you?" "No, just scared me." Frank put his arm around her shoulders. Not romantic, protective, like an uncle. Like family. "Come on. Let's get you inside. I'm calling your father." "Frank, don't. He'll worry. And he's got another show tomorrow night. He's going to worry a hell of a lot more if he finds out about this later, and I didn't tell him." They walked back into the sands through the side entrance. Frank guided her to a private room off the main casino floor. One of the high roller suites that was kept empty for occasions like this. He sat her down, got her a glass of water, and picked up the phone. Dean answered on the second ring. He was still in his dressing room. "Dino, it's Frank. Deanna's fine. But you need to come down to the Palazzo suite." There was a pause. Then Dean's voice, sharp with instant alertness. "What happened? Just come down. She's okay, I promise." 2 minutes later, Dean Martin burst through the door. He went straight to his daughter, checked her face, her arms, looking for injuries. "I'm fine, Dad. Really." "What happened?" Frank explained. Calmly, factually. Two men grabbed her in the parking lot. Said they wanted to talk to Dean. Frank intervened. They left. Dean's face went through several emotions. Fear, relief, and then something harder, something cold. "Did you recognize them?" he asked Frank. "No, but they weren't tourists. They knew who Deanna was, knew who you were. This wasn't random." Dean nodded slowly. He was quiet for a moment. Then he stood up and walked to the phone. "Dad, who are you calling?" "Someone who needs to know about this." He dialed. Waited. When someone answered, he spoke quietly. "It's Dean. I need to talk to him." "Yeah, I know what time it is. Tell him it's important." There was a long pause. Then Dean's voice changed slightly. More respectful. More careful. "Sorry to wake you. We've got a situation, no, at the Sands. Two guys grabbed Deanna in the parking lot tonight. I don't know who they were. Frank ran them off. I understand. Thank you." He hung up. Looked at Frank. "He wants to see us. Both of us." 20 minutes. Frank nodded. Like he'd expected this. Deanna looked between them. "Who did you just call?" Dean sat back down next to her. Put his hand over hers. "Sweetheart, Las Vegas has rules. And one of those rules is that certain people are off limits. Family is off limits. What happened tonight broke those rules. So we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again." 20 minutes later, Frank and Dean walked into a private villa at the Desert Inn. Deanna had wanted to come, but Dean had insisted she stay at the Sands with Sammy, who'd been called to babysit. She'd protested, but one look at her father's face told her not to push it. The villa was elegant. expensive. A man in his 50s sat in a leather chair, a drink in his hand. He stood when they entered, shook hands with both of them. His name doesn't matter for this story. What matters is that he was connected, deeply connected, to the people who ran Las Vegas in ways that had nothing to do with gaming licenses or city permits. Dean. Frank. Sit down. Tell me what happened. Dean told the story. The man listened without interrupting. When Dean finished, the man was quiet for a moment. Then he picked up the phone on the side table and made a call. It's me. I need you to find two men. They were at the Sands tonight. Approached Dean Martin's daughter in the parking lot. Grabbed her. I don't care what they wanted. I care that they put their hands on her. That's right. Find them. Bring them to me. I don't care where they are. Find them. He hung up. Looked at Dean and Frank. It's handled. What does that mean? Dean asked. It means those two men are going to learn that there are consequences for breaking the rules. It means no one touches your family. Not now. Not ever. And it means word is going to spread that you and yours are protected. Frank spoke up. They mentioned wanting to talk business with Dean. Like they thought they could use Deanna to get to him. The man's face darkened. Amateurs. Probably some wannabes from out of town who think they can muscle their way into something. They don't understand how things work here. And after tonight? Dean asked quietly. After tonight, everyone will understand. You have my word. They sat in silence for a moment. Then the man stood. The meeting was over. Dean, give your daughter my apologies. What happened tonight was unacceptable. It won't happen again. Dean and Frank left. Walked back to the Sands in silence. When they got back to the suite, Deanna and Sammy were playing cards. She looked up when they entered. Well, it's taken care of, Dean said. He didn't elaborate. What does that mean? It means you're safe, and those men won't bother you or anyone else again. Deanna looked at Frank. What did you do? When you threatened them in the parking lot, what phone call were you going to make? Frank lit a cigarette. Took a long drag. The same one your father just made. In this town, honey, there are people who make sure things run smoothly. And one of the rules is that civilians don't get touched. Especially not family. Those guys broke the rule. Now they pay for it. Are they going to kill them? I don't know. That's not my decision. But I know they won't be grabbing anyone else in any parking lot ever again. Sammy spoke up from the card table. Deanna, you got to understand something. Vegas isn't like other places. There's an order to things. Your dad, Frank, me, we're protected because we bring people here. We fill the casinos. We make the town money. But more than that, we're respected. Because we respect the rules. What happened tonight was someone not respecting the rules. And in Vegas, that doesn't stand. The two men were found 6 hours later. They were in their hotel room at the Tropicana. The men who came for them didn't knock. Just walked in. By dawn, both men were on a plane back to wherever they'd come from. Broken noses, fractured ribs, and a message that had been delivered clearly and painfully. Dean Martin's family was untouchable. Frank Sinatra's protection meant something. And Las Vegas took care of its own. Word spread fast. By the next night, every connected guy in Vegas knew what had happened, knew that Dean's daughter had been grabbed, knew that Frank had intervened, knew that consequences had been delivered swiftly and severely. And the message was clear. The Rat Pack wasn't just entertainment. They were protected. under the umbrella of something bigger and more dangerous than most people understood. Deanna never had another problem in Las Vegas. Neither did any of the other Rat Pack families. When they walked into casinos, when their kids visited, when their wives went shopping, they moved in a bubble of absolute safety. Because everyone knew, everyone understood. You don't touch them. You don't threaten them. You don't even look at them wrong. Frank Sinatra never talked about that night publicly. Neither did Dean. It became one of those stories that circulated in whispers, in back rooms, in conversations between people who knew how Vegas really worked. But years later, in an interview, Deanna mentioned it. Briefly, carefully. My father and Frank, they protected me that night, she said. Not just physically. But they made sure I understood that I was safe. That there were people who would make sure nothing like that ever happened again. I didn't fully understand it at the time. How connected they were. What kind of world they moved in. But I understood that they loved me. And that their love had weight behind it. The interviewer asked if she was scared. In the moment, yes. Those men in the parking lot, they scared me. But afterward, no. Because I saw what Frank did. I saw how quickly my father moved. I saw that they had the power to protect me. And they used it without hesitation. That's not scary. That's love. Frank Sinatra died in 1998. His funeral was attended by hundreds of people. Family, friends, celebrities, and some men in dark suits who stood in the back and didn't give their names to the press. Men who remembered a night in 1963 when Sinatra had made a call, when he'd protected someone who mattered, when he'd reminded everyone that he wasn't just a singer. He was connected. He was powerful. And he took care of his own. Dean Martin died a year before Frank. His funeral had the same mix of mourners, the same dark-suited men in the back, the same unspoken understanding that Dean had been more than an entertainer. He'd been part of something larger, something that operated in the shadows but protected its own with absolute loyalty. Deanna spoke at her father's funeral. She talked about his kindness, his humor, his talent, and briefly, so briefly that most people missed it, she mentioned Las Vegas. My father taught me that family means everything, she said, and that sometimes the people who protect you aren't the ones you expect. Sometimes protection comes from unlikely places. But when it comes, you accept it with gratitude, because in a dangerous world, being protected is a gift. The men in the back understood. They nodded slightly. They remembered. The two men who grabbed Deanna that night disappeared from history. No one knows what happened to them after they were put on that plane. No one asks. In Las Vegas, you don't ask questions like that. But the story remained, passed down. A reminder of how things worked in the old days, when the mob ran the casinos and entertainers moved in a world where talent and danger intersected. When Frank Sinatra's word could end a threat with a phone call. When Dean Martin's daughter could walk safely through a parking lot because everyone knew the consequences of touching her. It was a different time, a darker time in some ways, but also simpler. There were rules. You followed them, and if you didn't, there were consequences. Frank stood in a parking lot and said 5 words that changed everything. Then I make a phone call. Not a physical threat, not violence, just the promise of a phone call. But everyone knew what that call meant, who it would go to, what would happen next. And 2 men who thought they could grab a young woman and use her to get to her father learned that some people can't be touched. Some families are protected by more than security guards and locked doors. They're protected by loyalty, by power, by a network of dangerous men who enforce rules that were never written down, but everyone understands. The Mafia stood down that night. Not because Frank Sinatra was physically intimidating, but because he had something more valuable than physical strength. He had connections. He had respect. He had the ability to make one phone call that would end anyone who threatened the people he loved. That's real power, not the kind that flexes or shouts or throws punches. The kind that speaks quietly and moves mountains. Deanna Martin is still alive. She's in her 80s now. She writes books, does interviews, talks about her father with love and admiration. And sometimes when asked about Las Vegas, about those years, about that world, she smiles. It was complicated, she says, but I always felt safe. Because my father and Frank and the others, they made sure I was safe, however they had to do it. The night was warm. Las Vegas in July of 1963. Two men made a mistake. Frank Sinatra made a phone call, and the Mafia made sure that mistake was the last one those men ever made in Las Vegas. The Strip still blazes with neon. The casinos still fill with crowds. But the old rules, the old protections, they're mostly gone now. Corporate ownership, legal oversight, a different world. But for one night, in a parking lot, a young woman learned what it meant to be truly protected. And two men learned what it meant to break the wrong rule in the wrong town. Frank didn't throw a punch, didn't raise his voice above a whisper, just made a promise. And in Las Vegas, when Frank Sinatra made a promise, people listened. Even the Mafia. Especially the Mafia.